Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so happy to have back on the podcast Dr. Tara Vossenkemper. Tara, welcome. Glad you're
Thank
here.
you. Yeah, glad to
Yes.
be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm happy to be
And
here.
so Tara and I have been acquainted with each other for several years now. Just I don't know when we first actually met, but
I don't
Tara,
know
I've
either.
known about you for a long time. But tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, we had to have met through Joe or Casey or it's
Yeah.
years and years ago. Yeah, it's crazy to think
Mm-hmm.
about. So
Sure.
let's see. I landed where I landed. I started in academia. I left quickly and I shifted into private practice. I had a baby in that mix and I finished a dissertation and I just realized I don't want to do academic life. And so shifted over into private practice. And so these are sort of like overlapping. When I had my baby, I also realized, my first child, I should say I have three, but I realized I needed somebody to see some clients in my absence. So I brought on a supervisee. And so that sort of like evolved and morphed into within a year, I had five other people with me or something like group practice ownership. And also at that point, that probably a year later, I started to take it really seriously. And so I was, devouring all of these books as you do when you are learning
Mm-hmm.
about group practice stuff. And so reading all these books and listening to all these podcasts and doing masterminds and anything I could, anything I could get my hands on basically. And then that of course like kept going. And I think at some point at the risk of like being wrong. So some people might look and say like she's not very good, but at some point I think I got good at business. Like it just
Mm-hmm.
clicks for me. The systemic thought around it, the nuance of people, like holding space between structure and autonomy and ensuring culture is healthy. Like all of it just it lights me up. When I did clinical work, I specialized in couples because I like the song and dance between high level meta and like no, this is how we actually say things and the most effective way, this like high level and then like boots on the ground. And for
Mm-hmm.
me that also was business. And so it was I like needing to be grounded theoretically and then also having to apply everything I'm learning has to like be applied.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so I'm saying that to say at some point I think I got good at it because then people would start asking me to do some consultation. I would just have
Mm-hmm.
randomly people ask me, "Hey, can we do this?" And so then I started consulting. And so that's been much, much less. I haven't really hit that hard. I've been doing it on, like for a few years I've been consulting, but I have never really focused heavily on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so recently in my group, which has just continued to like get healthier, we implemented the EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system in well, twice, but the first time was a bust and I didn't do it the right way. And the second
Mm-hmm.
time, it's just maybe it was 2021, I think we started it. And it's just continued to evolve and just get healthier from there, which has allowed me as the visionary in my practice, my group practice, to step out. And then
Mm-hmm.
I feel like now I have this system, the structure that is very well run, not because I'm the one that has my hands in all the pots, but because the structure is sound and there's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's very rich and like I'm digressing. My point is because of this being healthy, I'm able to step back as a legit, visionary and then now focus more on consulting. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe like 5 months ago, I also started 4 months ago. It was February of 2025. I started a podcast as well. And so I have yeah, I guess that's what I have going on. I've got a podcast that I mean, podcast it's awesome. Like you're just sharing
Mm-hmm.
information with people if they want to listen to it. I have a membership a program through my consulting, of course. I have consulting period. So we'll just say broad speaking, there's consulting on one side and then my group practice is still, you know, trucking along on the other. I felt like that was
Yeah.
so long-winded. I hope
Well,
not. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no. That's perfect. I mean, that's just I love hearing people's stories and how they get to where they are. And one of the things that I know is a passion of yours is just the culture of a practice.
Mm.
And so, we throw that term around, just having a good culture. So, but what in your mind is a good culture in a practice? I mean, what makes for that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have a lot of thoughts. So, high level, I would say for me, Daniel Coyle, The Culture Code, his book, The
Mm-hmm.
Culture Code. I love Daniel Coyle. And he says really healthy cultures have three things. They have vulnerability, they have belongingness, and they have purpose. And so that's great. And he actually, after he published that book, he came out with a workbook, which I think is great because I'm sure a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people were like, well, how do you get this? So on a more practical level, excuse me. So I agree with that. Belongingness, purpose, and oh my gosh, vulnerability, excuse me, that we
Yeah.
have to have these
Uh-huh.
things to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think of that as like if I were to walk into my practice or if somebody is to walk into my practice, I want them to feel those things about like the entire system. They're seeing this all around them. In terms of how we relate to each other, which for me, this is part of building those three broad things, but how we engage with one another, with our community, with our clients, we frame that as these are our core values. And our core values are, be authentic and candid, own your shit, be excellence oriented and growth centric, embrace interdependence, and have depth and fun. And so we
Mm-hmm.
assess on these values. This is like the more of the day-to-day thing. These are the things we're looking at, our core values.
Mm-hmm.
And our core values are set up in such a way, and I'm saying this because we've gone through every quarter we're looking at our core values and we're looking at them and saying, okay, is this still accurate? First of all, are we missing
Mm-hmm.
anything? Like, are we trying to poke holes in them, excuse me. And so this like there's been this active grappling process with core values over 4 years. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's been through iterations. A lot of them are even though the very inception of the core values, there's a lot of through threads, you know what I mean? And like, but there's been some
Mm-hmm.
evolution. So the core values are the way that we show up with each other. And on purpose, ours are set up in such a way that if we live these out, we're building this other stuff out as well. We are ensuring belongingness and vulnerability and purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
then also, if we go back to the core values, we are ensuring that we're not showing up with horsemen, like Gottman horsemen, no
Mm-hmm.
contempt, no defensiveness, no criticism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so then there's that. So we've got, again, Daniel Coyle stuff at the top, core values, how we engage with each other, sort of in the middle on a day-to-day level. But what's also really important to me and what I think is part of culture is, and I got this from Cal Newport. I also love Cal Newport. He wrote this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. And in the book, he referenced that people, I'm going to butcher this, but because it's been years since I've read it, but this is how it lives inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
People who feel like they have a calling, have high levels of autonomy, relatedness, and ooh, what's that third one? Competence. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so for me also, I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking to myself, how do I anytime, okay, here's what I mean by this. Okay, anytime we are looking at a process in our practice, we need to implement something, we need to do something new. My question is always going to be always to myself and then also to my team because my leadership team now knows this is like very important for me. How do we implement the most like the smallest level of structure that we need that gets us what we need, that ensures the practice is uniform and streamlined, but then also give people space to flex within that structure. I
Mm-hmm.
refuse to do anything I'm not going to implement a structure at the erosion of autonomy, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. And
Right.
then, and with the competence piece also, it's if we're going to implement something, how do we ensure that people feel confident in doing this thing, whatever this thing might be?
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah. Yeah.
might be a
Yeah.
lot of
Could
talking,
you?
but it's like,
Yeah. So, what can you give an example of that, or maybe a shift you've made and some of the core values
ooh,
that you've rethought, I guess.
Yeah. Oh my God. Let me think back to the very beginning. Have depth and fun has always been there because, of course, we love
Mm-hmm.
depth, but also like I'm gonna tell fart jokes. Like there's like you don't have to like stay in the deep. You can just life is also fun. Like it's
Uh-huh.
fun and it's
Uh-huh.
deep. So let me think. A core value that evolved. Oh, I have a good example. Okay. We had embrace interdependence is more of a recent core value. And so we had somebody who left, and after they left, and it was a good departure where it was like, I don't think you want this role. Like, and they were like, yeah, I actually don't know if I do either. And so it was like a good conversation and the departure was fine. And so after the fact, I remember meeting with leadership and having the discussion, like, what we are missing something here. Like we have, depth and fun, excellence oriented and growth centric. We have this stuff, but there's nothing here that's reflective of an us and not just an I. And the person that left, they wanted to work in a silo. Like they wanted to just do their own thing and they didn't want to put effort in to see how this thing that they might do has an impact on all these other related pieces.
Right.
And so from that departure came this discussion that was like, we're missing something. Like something's not right about this. And then there's like, an hour and a half or 2 hour long conversation about like, oh, okay, what is it? Like, what is the thing that's missing? And finally coming to this, like symbiosis. This is a
Mm-hmm.
living entity that everything that we do impacts the people around us, not like their roles, sure, but also like the person around us, maybe. So that's like an example of how embracing interdependence came.
Mm-hmm.
I, yeah, I think that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And yeah, and so I guess the challenge becomes being able to communicate that to people on the front end about, what the culture's about and how they fit into
Yeah.
it and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we start that in our hiring process. Like
Mm-hmm.
whenever we bring people on, we on a quarterly basis. I keep referencing quarterly because through EOS we do leadership team full day quarterly meetings where we review our entire vision and traction organizer. It's,
Mm-hmm.
stuff is like kept in one place. And then after that meeting, and we set new quarterly goals, we reflect on the ones we just had, we set new ones. After that meeting, I will host a full team state of the practice meeting. It's just an hour long thing, but we're doing like an overview of like, hey, okay, we said we were going to hit these goals. We did or didn't. Here's why or why not. We recap values there where it's like, all right, you all tell me, like, what are the values? Like, you should know these by
Mm-hmm.
now, like, what are they? How are you living them out, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
I talk about them frequently and we'll reference them, like, we'll do shout outs, like, hey, shout out to, Gordon for authentic and candid conversation. Like, that was an incredible conversation we had. Like,
Mm-hmm.
kudos. I might not get into detail about what it is, but I'm going to do a team shout out.
Mm-hmm.
But in the very beginning, our phone screen, even we have values specific questions. And then if they get through the phone screen, we do a team meet and greet. And the people at the meet and greet, I don't allow any direct superior to be there, like direct supervisor, or like I'm not at the meet and greets. The If it's for a clinician, my director of clinical ops is not going to be at the meet and greet. It's just going to be whoever's on the hiring committee.
Mm-hmm.
And their goal, and they know this because I have a whole little like hiring committee manual. It's just a couple pages, but helping them understand the full process and what I want out of them. What I want them to do is to assess for values. Just
Right.
sit here and bullshit with this person and just be thinking, like keep the lens in your mind, keep this filter in your mind of am I seeing values? Like, am I seeing candor? Am I seeing authenticity? Am I seeing depth? Am I seeing fun? Like, be thinking
Mm-hmm.
about these things. And then of course we continue, but I think, and we talk about it. We talk about it. We ask for lived examples from people and we assess it for in like a much more mild state. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like in that meet and
Mm-hmm.
greet, it's way more low key. It should be fun for people realistically to be there. It's not, yeah.
Right.
But all of those things are just now I have like multiple points of data on this. And so if
Mm-hmm.
somebody is not a values fit, we don't we don't bring them
Yeah.
on. I don't care
Right.
how skilled they are as a clinician. Like if it's not a values fit, it's not,
Yeah.
they don't join.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of, yeah, you kind of get it, nip it in the bud, as they say, before
as
it
much as
starts.
possible. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. So I know we said we weren't going to talk about it much, but explain EOS to
Yeah,
folks that
yeah.
might be curious about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So EOS is, I think I said, but just in case I didn't, it's the entrepreneurial operating system developed by Gino Wickman. It is detailed thoroughly in the book Traction. And
Okay.
then if you want a fable version, sort of like Patrick Lencioni style fable, a book that brings traction or EOS to life is called Get a Grip. And when I first
Okay.
started doing this, I was bouncing back and forth between the two. I would read Traction, I would listen to the full Get a Grip. I would go back and read Traction, I would listen to Get a Grip. I would just bounce back and forth because Traction is very much like I mean, I literally, it's in my work bag still. Like I have it with me
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah.
marked up and it's just, yeah, incredible. So Traction is basically an entire, it's what does he say in the book or maybe on his blog or I don't have any idea, but if you think about your literally like on your computer, it runs on an operating system. There's all these
Mm-hmm.
rules in the background. There's all these codes and like ways in which the thing that you're using is operating from something underneath that you're not really even privy to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the same idea for business that we have to have some structure in place that helps us handle problems as they come up in real time and keeps us moving towards a vision. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's like a very, very nutshell version, but there are six components to traction. There's your
Mm-hmm.
vision, there's data, people, process, issues, which is probably one of my favorite levels, and traction itself. And so when he says
Mm-hmm.
traction, he's talking about like where rubber meets road, like
Yeah. Right.
like
Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah. So it might be actual accountability, but also even like your meeting rhythms. So like
Yeah.
a weekly cadence and then quarterly and annual for one big one. So
Yeah.
I cannot recommend traction enough. I cannot recommend EOS enough.
Wow.
I could talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really could. So I'm like, I could talk
Uh,
so much more. Is that like a
yeah.
helpful
Yeah.
start at
Yeah.
least,
Yes, it is. And I think and we'll have reference to it in the show notes and the show summary so people can look it up. But yeah, and so I've got to be aware of our time, Tara.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but tell folks about your podcast and
Oh,
what is what they can hear there.
yeah. So the name of the podcast is the Culture Focused Practice Podcast because we do all things through a lens of culture, just period. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the name of the podcast. I think you can find it anywhere that there are podcasts. I also have a bunch of stuff on YouTube. So Culture Focused
Mm-hmm.
Practice on YouTube, all my podcast stuff is on YouTube as well. Everything that we talked about today. So leadership and more actually, but leadership, I talk a lot of there's EOS and structure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, culture,
Mm-hmm.
employees. I love employee engagement, health, oversight, organizational structure, etc. So leadership, culture, employees, structure. Also, I developed this framework for practice, sort of basically looking at it as a full organism, sort of like a cell.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other components that I don't talk as much about, but that are part of the conversation are also feedback, financials, and then marketing. And I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
marketing like do Google ads. I mean marketing like alignment and conceptual and why are we doing something? Why are we doing something and how does it connect to our like who we are sort of
Mm-hmm.
all the way down to the center? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. I can't wait to listen to it. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, well, Tara, I hope we'll be able to have more conversations here
Yeah.
again. We went too long without having you back on the
I know it's been a
podcast, but
while.
it
Yeah.
has been a while. But
Mhm.
tell folks how they can get in touch with you and find out all your stuff.
Yeah. Everything is at www.taravossenkemper.com. Boom. Work with me
That
stuff, sure, but also link to the podcast is there. So if you just want to go find that, just go to the website. You'll
sure,
access stuff
sure.
there. Yeah.
And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary as usual. And
Yeah.
well, Tara, good to reconnect, and we'll have you
Yeah.
back here soon.